Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for listening to Operation Agency Freedom, where we are bringing you the top secret advice from the world's most badass digital agency owners. These amazing men and women are sharing their stories of how they have built 6, 7, and 8-figure digital agencies and how you can too. My name is Chris Martinez, CEO of Dude, where we help digital agencies by giving them the people and the processes so that they can scale profitably. Today, I am joined by my brother from another mother, the very, very successful Casey Carroll from Action Advertising Agency. What's up, Casey?
Dude, I'm actually really disappointed that you didn't wear your luchador mask. I was really hoping for the luchador mask during this interview, man.
I am more disappointed that you're not wearing yours.
Oh, that's right. You know, it's actually sitting over there. I could actually put it on. I mean, we could just pause this and just get weird with luchador masks and then just grunt into the microphone for a little bit if you want.
Dude, I'm all about getting weird, but my mask, I think, is in the shop. Dude, so we did, I don't know.
It's getting dry cleaned.
We did something and I got beer spilled on it or something and it stinks. Like that thing needs a deep, deep cleaning before I put that on my head again.
Oh, geez. I can imagine just the funk that you get after that luchador mask is like part of your personal brand now, you know? It's
yeah, absolutely.
So like I'd be wearing that going to the grocery store, paying my taxes, you know, like going down the street, just scaring kids on the street, grunting at them and stuff, you know?
Yes, absolutely. I do have plans to bust it out here in Mexico and like do some funny videos. Those are in the works though. So awesome, man. Thanks for being on the show. You know, we're going to talk all about your agency and your story in a second, but as we start off with every show, we do a little kind of like roundtable discussion. And I'm very excited for this topic, as I'm sure that you are as well, because we were talking about offline. Yeah. So let's talk about growing up Asian in the United States, or half Asian, because we're both half Asian. I learned literally 2 days ago that your mother is from Taiwan. My mother is also from Taiwan, and that alone creates lots of unique experiences for people like us. And then also, you know, being in this industry, in the digital agency world, there aren't a whole lot of like Asian Americans in this industry. And if you go to conferences, definitely not a whole lot of people that are taking the stage. So let's talk about like your experiences growing up Asian American.
I don't know, man. It was weird because, you know, growing up in Hawaii and all, it's kind of like if you're not Asian or if you're, I never really, I guess to me, it didn't really feel that weird because I'm surrounded by like Filipinos and Asians and Tongans and like Samoans and stuff. And so, you know, if you're a haole, which is, you know, definitely a derogatory term for like a white dude in Hawaii, that's really where the real trouble is. And, you know, you can never really tell exactly what I am because like, I'm like, are you a mutt? Are you like Asian? Are you like white? I mean, I don't even know what the hell I am half the time. I mean, 23andMe, I'm pretty sure lies to me and they switch up on me half the time too. Dude, check this out. I thought I was actually part Japanese at one point, and then 23andMe throws a cannonball in my face and tells me I'm actually like Thai. I had no idea. My mom didn't know either. Like, my life is a lie, dude.
But you're also a big dude. I mean, you're like, what, 6'1", 6'2"?
Yeah, I'm like 6'1.5". The half an inch matters, but size matters. Yes. No, but no, actually, I don't know, man. It's weird because like my mom is a tiny Asian, and like she speaks fluent Mandarin, and you know, like grew up Taipei and all that sort of stuff.
Has the accent.
Yeah, dude. And I was joking with you because I had no idea that you were also half Asian too. Like I thought you were just full blown Mexican, but you know, I guess when you're like sort of brown skin, like you could be like a number of nationalities and stuff, you know? Right. So I thought it was kind of funny that, you know, neither one of us ended up being a lawyer or a doctor. Like we probably were like in our genes or, you know, just terrible drivers or whatever, you know? I broke all the stereotypes, dude. I must be a terrible Asian, bro.
So wait. So I've heard that actually from other people that growing up in Hawaii, you don't necessarily feel different or whatever because you're Asian. When did you come to the mainland, and did you experience any differences when you came in?
Culture shock, you mean?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck, no culture shock at all. Yes, there was a lot of culture shock. Dude, you got to realize, man, like when you grow up in Hawaii, I mean, it is the whole way of life is like, it's a totally different kind of way of life. I mean, like time slows down. No one shows up on time to everything. Island time is actually a very real thing that all of us are. Dude, part of the reason why I think I have to be, you know, a business owner and why I do most of my business on the internet is because if I had to actually show up someplace on time, I would be fucking 15 minutes late, literally to everything. I've almost gotten fired from every single job I've ever had. Yeah. Not because of performance, but because I was late. And it's like, to me, it just seemed like it was really trivial to really, you know, obviously, you know, some people do say that, you know, showing up, you know, late kind of shows that you just don't really give a shit or whatever. And that
Right.
maybe that is a little bit the part of the case too, because I hated working for other people and stuff. But, I don't know. I mean, it was such a massive culture shock. I moved when I was 14, but I still, my dad still lives there. My sister still lives there. My brother did live there until he moved to California, and then he's in the Army now as well. And of course, I got married there last year and stuff too. So I still go back to my roots like on a regular basis and stuff. But fuck, dude, the culture shock. I mean, you got to like when it's like a high of 80 and a low of 70 every day, and you see the beach and it's never rainy at all, and like you are surrounded by primarily also minorities as well.
Yeah.
When you get to like the mainland, fuck, dude, everyone was white and everyone was like not very open to outsiders. Because I didn't move to just like the another like metropolitan city. I moved to like bumfuck Egypt. Like I went to a town called La Center, Washington, which my graduating class had 93 students in it.
Wow.
Students. And it is a rural town in the middle of nowhere type stuff. And so to go from Hawaii to that, where like, I'm not kidding, like, when I went to high school, there were Confederate flags hanging from some of these like trucks that were in the high school parking lot and shit.
Yeah.
They're not very open to outsiders, especially when you look so different and you're so like, it was definitely a massive culture shock. And I really struggled, I think, a lot to assimilate with that culture, especially considering like I was just so used to a certain way of life. It forced me to adapt. And man, I did not fit in at all. Like when I moved, dude, I was picked on just brutally. And it was tough, dude. It really wasn't. It was, I would say that a lot of the stuff that I went through, like when I moved from Hawaii to the mainland is probably like what developed quite a bit of a chip on my shoulder too, that kind of, I think I use as ammunition to this day too, because man, I mean, like every time I see like some of these kids that were bullying me that like ended up on heroin or meth or something, I'm like, I beat you, bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Dude, that shit is real. Like, and I grew up in LA where there is a ton of diversity, and I still remember, getting picked on for being Asian. Well, I mean, half Asian, and then my grandfather's from Mexico.
Yeah. Wait, you're Mexican?
Most people actually think that I'm Filipino. I've heard a lot of different things. I've gotten Hawaiian, I've gotten Filipino, straight up Mexican, Chinese, and then one person even thought I was like from India, which I was like,
wow,
you serious, man? But like, there is, I remember going to like parties when I was in high school, and like people would say racist ass shit. Like,
really?
who let this nip in here?
You're shitting me.
I swear to God. What? I swear to God. And this is in LA, I don't know if it's more prevalent, if it was more prevalent back then.
Yeah.
But I definitely understand the chip on the shoulder thing. And, I've talked about this in more detail with like other Asian Americans sharing our experiences.
Yeah.
Because, at least now there's more positive role models in the media and stuff, but people say that Asian Americans are the model minority mainly because we just keep our fucking mouths shut.
Yeah, we
just kind of fall in line. But I've seen some like psychological damage to this shit. So like I used to lift with this dude named Jason. God, this is like 7 or 8 years ago, and he was half Japanese, half white.
Yeah,
stud athlete, like ran track, very quiet, like reserved guy. Yeah. And somehow the topic of girls came up. And he was like, I could never date a white girl. Like, I don't think that a white girl will ever like me. He had this huge like inferiority complex.
Well, dude, okay, Asian parents can be kind of severely judgmental in many ways too.
But for him, it wasn't necessarily the Asian parents, because his parents were like third generation Japanese, Japanese American, they grew up here.
Off the boat type stuff.
No, they weren't Fabi at all. So, but he just had this inferiority complex that, like, for whatever reason, a white woman would never be interested in him.
Really?
Yeah. And so I was like, dude, like, why? Why do you think that? He's like, it's just, I'm Japanese and da 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 da. And I'm like, man, like, you're a fucking stud. Yeah. Like, you can do whatever you want. You can date anybody that you want.
Right. And like, I think, like, I don't know, man. Like, so my mom was pretty strict growing up just with school and stuff, like
Tiger mom. Yes, I got that.
Tiger moms, dude. Like, B is for bitch, and backhand you for like, how dare you? Like, if you get stung like a bee, you brought shame to family.
Exactly.
No bees in this house. No, I gotta say, I don't know. I mean, growing up, the culture also, like, you got to realize, like, I grew up in a culture which was not only Hawaiian to begin with, where like everyone's your auntie and your uncle. Dude, everything is served with rice, like potatoes. What the
Oh
hell is
yeah.
that shit? No one eats potatoes in Hawaii. It's all rice and spam, dude,
Right.
And so I grew up in that. And also, like, school in Hawaii was also very different. School, like, I could tell you fucking everything about, like, every island has its own individual flower. Every island has its own unique nickname. I
Yeah.
learned a shit ton about, like, Hawaiian culture. Didn't know jack shit about, like, American culture whatsoever. Like, Trail of Tears, what's that? Like,
Oh,
the
really?
Spanish-American War, had no idea that existed. Like, I didn't learn that shit in Hawaii. And they really, like, the Hawaiian educational system really, really just preaches so heavily about a Hawaiian culture and preserving Hawaiian culture, not allowing white culture to kind of like whitewash what the Hawaiians went through, because a lot of Hawaiians still hate the fact that they're even part of the United States. They really don't want to be part of the United States, and they really actively just hate the fact that the white culture took over their islands, and they feel like it was stolen from them, kind of like Native Americans feel like America was stolen from them. That's exactly how the Hawaiians feel too.
Wow. That's
and
amazing,
so
man.
it's, yeah, man, I don't know, but even like growing up Asian and stuff, I don't look so incredibly Asian to the point where you're like, hey, this guy's got to be the hardcore Asian, like I am half Asian still to the, so I'm definitely still, but I think my white genes must have like overpowered it, because I'm the tallest Asian I've ever met, except for
You probably get this just as much as I do, like where somebody's just like looking at you and they're like, and you can tell that this question is coming. They're like, so what are you? I love when they say, what's your nationality? And I'm like,
what are you? Like,
I'm an American motherfucker. Like,
yeah, exactly.
my
Like,
ethnicity. Okay. Yeah. My mother's from
you want to see my 23andMe profile? Is that what you're trying to say? I'll show you all of my genes now at this point, which, by the way, 23andMe has been a very interesting. Did you ever see what I dealt with 23andMe on my Facebook page?
I don't think if I did, I forgot.
So I started first with wondering how what my actual genes are, and like where my heritage is and all that sort of stuff. And then it confirms certain things, and then I'm like, whoa, holy crap, I'm not Filipino, or I'm not Japanese anymore. Wait a minute, I'm like, I might be Filipino. And then they switched over to Thai and Khmer and Cambodian. I'm like, dude, what the fuck am I? Like, why can't you give me an accurate placement here? You got my genes, you know my shit.
Yeah.
And then a couple months later, this started happening like last November, and I confirmed it in January. I found out that I had a long lost brother that was 47 years old that no one knew about, including my dad, who was
what?
Yeah. And so I started first with curiosity about my genes and like all of like do I have any propensities for diseases or any of that sort of stuff, and ended up with a long lost brother that literally my dad or anyone never knew about. He was actually given up for adoption by his birth mom. And so I'm sitting here like, my life is a lie. I'm not the oldest son. This is the weirdest fucking thing in the world to have to deal with. And I'm sure that there's a lot of, if anyone who's listening to this, I'm sure there's someone that's heard a story about like 23andMe just completely turning someone's life upside down. But yeah, I'm like the poster child of just being curious and then learning more about something that kind of like exposed this massive hidden thing that no one knew about and just completely changed everything afterwards,
That's awesome, man.
I'm grateful for it too. I mean, the guy's a cool guy. I haven't met him yet. He lives in Ohio, but it is still kind of an interesting thing to go through. So if you're ever interested in doing 23andMe, number one, your DNA might get stolen. Your genes might be cloned into a super army someday. So be careful for that. But then also number two, you might come across either a long lost brother, or you might find out something about your heritage or your genes that you didn't know about. Or you might find out that your dad's not your dad. So
awesome.
Good luck with that, everyone. Have fun.
Hey, I still think it's worth it to roll the dice. Better to know, in my opinion. All right, man. So let's transition. Yeah. Let's get into your agency story.
Cool.
So tell me about your agency, what you guys do, and then we'll just kind of take it from there.
All right. So Action Advertising Agency basically was started after I filled out a bunch of other businesses first, and basically couldn't make this whole entrepreneurship journey actually work in my favor.
Yes.
I've started like 16 different businesses probably like over the last probably, ever since I was in high school. Like I wanted to start an eBay business at one point, that failed. And a bunch of other businesses. I was a house flipper, that failed. But basically I've had to start over from scratch in my life. I graduated from Washington State University, got my bachelor's degree, I had a professional sales certificate, went to the National Collegiate Sales Competition in 2008.
Wow.
And then I was recruited pretty heavily in sales positions after that. And so I started working for the corporate man right when the Great Recession happened.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a pretty tough time. I mean, to be a professional salesperson when, like when a lot of the verticals and stuff that I was going after at the time were out of business, like
Yep.
my territory was just carved out all of a sudden to the point where there was nothing for me to even be able to sell. Like my manager, as he was writing me up because he was forced to, because the area vice president required it for anyone who didn't meet a certain threshold. When he hired me, he put me in a territory that physically could not actually reach my quota. It was physically impossible to hit my quota. And he put me in that fucking territory. And so as he was writing me up, he goes, yeah, we realized that, we probably shouldn't put you in that territory, but I have to write you up anyways. And so that's my experience in the corporate world. In fact, I have a very vivid memory one time of when I was working, because I was a business account executive for FedEx at one point, and then I was a business account executive for a very large wireless carrier that to this day I'm not really a huge fan of, but I worked with them and it was a great experience. But I remember one time, as they were starting to fire people for lack of performance, even though like businesses were shutting down, they were adding more reps and taking more territory away and stuff. And I remember we were sitting in a meeting where my area president said, if you can't meet your quota, then we'll be happy to promote you to customer. That's what they fucking said. I'm not kidding.
Asshole.
It still etches in my soul how much I hate that saying and how much I felt in that moment about like, I can't stand this place. And I was like 23 years old and I was making close to like, $100,000 a year at the time. And I thought that was a lot of money and everything. And so I said, you know what? I don't care how much money I make. Like, this is just not who I am. And I knew in my DNA, like I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I grew up, my dad was, had his own successful law firm for my entire childhood. My mom had 3 or 4 different t-shirt shops that, she sold t-shirts to tourists and stuff, and that's what I grew up around. So I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I used to love house flipping shows and stuff. And I just said, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to go all in on this. And I decided to take a voluntary demotion from business account executive, creating my own schedule, being able to, go where I wanted to, when I wanted to, whatever, didn't have to clock in and out, to taking a retail job where I was making like half the money that I made in business sales. But I did it because I had 4 properties I was flipping at the time.
Nice.
And well, not so nice.
It sounded nice in theory.
It sounded nice.
I'm sure there's a but coming. Yeah.
Chase your dreams. Do what everyone else says. Struggle porn. Yeah, dude, trust me. So here's what happened. So as I was working on these 4 projects, I hired a project manager that ended up what I believe actually embezzling and stealing $40,000 of the funds that I had for the rehab projects, which crippled the projects from the start. And I borrowed that money actually from my best friend and my parents. And so I lost $40,000. I took a voluntary demotion to retail sales. I had to actually deed the property back to the hard money lender on 2 of them. I broke even on 1. And then the financing fell out at the very last second on the 4th property after I already took a voluntary demotion. And I'm like, fuck. Oh my God. Now I followed my dreams. I did what everyone, no one else feels comfortable to do. And what happened? I'm $40,000 in debt and I'm in retail sales. Where the hell did I go wrong with my life? And then I started I started drinking heavily, man. I got a DUI at that time because it was just I was like, it was really, really tough to have to like eat humble pie and to swallow my pride and realize that, hey, dude, you know what? You dug yourself a hole. You got to get yourself out of this hole yourself. No one else is going to give a shit about you in this situation. You got to do it. And the worst part too is like the feeling that I had in my stomach of realizing that I let people who trusted me down, especially like people that I really care about. And that really it was tough. It was so hard. And so It took me 2.5 years to actually get out of retail sales. I did eventually flip a house. And I made like $72,000, paid everyone back afterwards, then pivoted into flipping rent to own properties, did that for 2.5 years and flipped like 75 different rent to own properties in 10 different states and stuff.
Wow.
And then towards the end, I realized a lot of the rent to own people that I was, helping get into these properties and stuff weren't actually buying the homes. And I kind of like, and at the same time in 2016, when I did this, or when I shut the business off, in 2016, I mean, dude, it was a hot real estate market and no one's willing to sell to a wholesaler, to wholesale contract to someone else. And basically I was stuck, not being able to actually like pay my bills. Credit card debt was piling up. I was also part of a creative agency at the time as a chief marketing officer and was for 2 years and didn't make any money. And, the partnership just kind of fell apart and it got really nasty to the point where, there was a bunch of IRS debt that I didn't know about. And I said, this is the final straw, man. I can't do this anymore. So I literally got out of that partnership. I shut down my rent-own, flipping business and real estate flipping business that I had done for a couple of years, and from scratch started all over again at almost age 32. Actually, it was age 31 when I started all this shit over again. So I've only had an agency for the last 2.5 years or so, but all of that other shit that I went through kind of led me eventually towards this. And
Yes.
I'm kind of glad that I went through all that nasty shit, because had it not been for that, I probably would not actually have been where I'm at right now. Because when I was making the decision to either go into full-time agency, I saw an ad on Facebook, probably the same one that you saw, where we both ended up in the same group, and that's how we know each other.
Yeah.
But I was actually at the time, about to take the GMAT so I can get my MBA, and I was actually thinking about going back and working again for the corporate boss, just sucking my soul out of me slowly every single day, hating what I did. But at the time, it was better than the misery I was dealing with chasing this entrepreneurial dream. And I'm just very grateful that I didn't make that decision and instead decided to still bet on myself, put that fee of going into that group on my credit card, and literally going all in on starting my digital agency. And that's where I'm at today.
Yeah. And you guys are doing mainly like Facebook ads, right?
I do solely Facebook ads, but then also I deal a lot with like process consulting. So if I had to say what I do in a couple silos, number one, Facebook advertising. Number two, also as it relates to like the sales process. I've found that in the very beginning, like when I first started working with a lot of local agencies, I discovered that leads don't really solve most of their problems. Like, if you think you're a lead generation business and you're in the digital advertising world, you're probably going to lose customers very quickly. Most of the time, there's a lot of other problems that start to crop up when you give leads to a customer. And that's something that, I had to basically fall on my ass. Like I out of all the original clients that I had, like the first 10, I think I still only have one from that original batch. And that was one client that actually was just a closer. Like, they're a great sales organization and they get it, And so I learned that if I really wanted to maintain my clients and keep them for a much longer period of time, I really needed to teach them about follow-up process, closing, sales, like when it comes to objections, how to overcome objections, and what do you do in certain situations. And basically I got to dig into my sales background to help a lot of these local businesses with really sales process stuff that was inhibiting profit growth after that lead was sent over to that client. And so that's also part of what I do. And then the final thing that I do is, I work with auto dealers, but specifically a lot of what I do with that is like offline events, and also with Facebook attribution. And that is a whole different complex can of worms we can get into if we have time about offline events and Facebook attribution as well.
Yeah, dude. I mean, there's a huge hidden lesson in what you just said there about what it is that you guys do, which maybe you don't even recognize what it is. But it's that, you are not just running Facebook ads. It's that your agency, your signature system is like the consulting and the offline events, because there's a million people out there that run ads. That run Facebook ads.
I learned it was a commodity. I mean, like, because absolutely, when I started, it wasn't. I mean, when I started back in 2016, not everyone and their mother was starting a digital advertising agency. And, of course, like there's the advent of these gurus that came up that started selling all these courses all of a sudden. Hey, you can make all this money just, drinking pina coladas, banging hotties on the beach, driving Lamborghinis and Ferraris everywhere. Oh, dude, I want to live that dream, right?
Yep.
And there was a bunch of people who kind of came in around that same time, around 2017, 2018, to the point where when I started, not many people I talked to have even thought about Facebook advertising. They viewed Facebook advertising at the time as like, oh, posting shit on my wall. That's advertising. No, it's not. No, it's different. And so when I started, it was actually not a commodity. And then as it went on with dude, I'm not kidding. Like one of my clients will tell me he gets 20 emails a week from other people that are like, hey, I'm starting this, I'm a Facebook expert and I want to run your ads for you and blah, blah, blah. And then it's creating the scenario where people are like pricing themselves lower and lower and lower and lower for Facebook advertising. And the outcome of profit is really still a missing gap between like what they're offering and what the client's actually getting. And so, if you think you're just an advertising agency, you're dead wrong. You're really, the only thing that matters in advertising is if a client gives $1 to you, are you going to make them more dollars back than someone else? Yeah. And if you can't say that, then you're in the wrong business, dude. Like, this is not an advertising agency. This is a profit generation business for other businesses to make money off of what they put into me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and your adaptability is really, really important because everything in marketing at one point in time will become commoditized. You know, we've seen it with websites, we've seen it with the funnel hackers. Now we're seeing it with Facebook ads. We're also seeing it with LinkedIn. You know,
Yeah.
so there's a
Yeah.
million LinkedIn just over the past year. There's like a million LinkedIn lead gen companies out there. So
Totally.
that's huge, man. Really, really big lesson there.
And here's the thing too, it's hard to commoditize a skill set like sales
Right.
because it is something that takes a long time to perfect and master. Like, understanding the consulting process on system building around the follow-up process, around making sure that, when leads are at certain points of the sales cycle, that they get certain touch points, and hey, like minimizing no call no shows. That one thing alone, just minimizing no call no shows for businesses that they create appointments and stuff. That one change, just improving that with spending zero additional money on advertising, that one change of improving their no call no show rate from 40% to even 10%, which is totally doable with a lot of different systems nowadays, and it doesn't cost anything extra really. That big difference right there can double the amount of return on investment with no additional advertising cost. So you could spend all day long trying to create the cheapest leads, to mankind. But if you're broken with your sales process after that lead comes in, especially around like no call no shows and schedule rates and stuff, then none of that advertising shit works. It doesn't matter for you. Like, you're going to say that Facebook advertising doesn't work for me, and hey, these leads are garbage and they don't buy. Well, no, the reality is they take a different sales process and you're just selling them as if they're laydowns that are referrals. That's not how
Yeah.
it works.
So do most of the people come to you, like your clients, do they come to you looking for Facebook ads and then you end up selling them the bigger picture?
Not really, no.
Okay.
So I don't really position myself as an advertising agency because, like, I know some people like one call closes. That's not really me. Like, for me, I'm really looking for retention. So oftentimes, I'll pick my clients versus the other way around. And basically what I mean by that is, my initial offer is to talk about results and to not even talk about Facebook really at all. Facebook is just a medium that I use in order to get, lead generation, which is a necessary part of the profit generation process. But it's not necessarily something that, if I was to pivot to Google, I would take me a couple months to learn it, but could I be able to do the same thing? Yeah, probably. So what I really focus on the most is the result and the outcome, and that's really what people
Absolutely.
care about. Like so many people think that, hey, you know what, if I'm going to be selling this widget, hey, I'm going to talk about features and benefits. But what you don't think about is, okay, well, if someone buys a Corvette, do they really give a shit as much about like certain features of the Corvette, or do they care about the fact that when they're driving down the street, they're a single dude, they're in their middle aged, and they're suddenly newly single, and all of a sudden there's all these chicks looking at them, these chicas that are just like grinding their teeth looking at how much they want this dude's stuff.
Car.
Car,
Money.
of
Yeah.
course, yes. So it's like people buy things for what it brings to them. Like people buy Lamborghinis because it's cool, but also because like when they drive down the street, they get all this attention that they didn't get before, and it fills this void in their heart that they desperately seek to try to find or whatever. And it's your duty to peel the layers of that onion back to really sell what it is. So like, for example, I work with a lot of chiropractors, and a lot of chiropractors are guilty of thinking that they sell care plans and adjustments.
Mm-hmm.
That's what their business really is. No, you are commoditizing yourself if you do that. In fact, you have to peel back that onion during the exam process and ask questions around like, okay, so, what kind of pain are you experiencing? How long have you been dealing with? How does it make you feel?
Yep.
What are some things that you can't do right now that you'd like to do?
Boom. That's the exact one that I was thinking of.
Yes. What are some things that you would like to do that you can't because of the fact that you can't do this? And
Yep.
what if I could show you a way, that's fairly cost, effective to be able to help you be able to do these sorts of things. So it's walking a mile with your kids again. That's invaluable. If you can't walk a mile with your kids and they're getting older, right? Like if you can't do that, what kind of value do you place on something like that? You can't place a value on time. It's always constantly adding and you can't rewind it, So time is invaluable. There's all these other things that are you have to kind of peel that onion to really get to the real root of what you're selling, but it's never adjustments. It's always walking a mile or riding a bike or being able to eliminate these cluster headaches so that, maybe you have marital problems now because of the fact that you have migraines all the time and you just want it to end and you're going to get divorced. And because of all these migraines, your job performance is suffering and you're not able to get these promotions that you could have had otherwise if you just were able to tame these migraines, stuff like that. you're selling that outcome of really what it is that they're going to get as a result of using your product or service. You're not fucking selling your product or service. And
Right.
so many people are guilty of treating their product that way. You're dead wrong. If you can't make that connection for the client and also for yourself, then why the fuck are you in business in the first place?
Yep. Absolutely, man. Well, dude, we are out of time. This has been super
Shit.
invaluable. Yeah, dude, I absolutely love everything that you said. And I do want to have you back on to talk about the offline events thing, because I've never heard any other agency talk about that.
Yeah. In
So,
fact, well, I did just speak about that. No big deal, but
we'll have you on again. So what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Yeah, so you can go to www.actionad.agency. You can also find me on Facebook, facebook.com/actionads, plural, agency. Someone took action ad and I want to fight them for it, but whatever. Or you can find me at facebook.com/Casey Carroll live, CASEYCARROLL live.
Awesome. And then who would be the perfect person to reach out to you today?
Someone who is ready to make a change in some way, shape, or form and wants to talk and see, hey, yeah, am I good to fit? I actually turn down a lot of clients too, just to give you a heads up. So I'm very, very picky. And I'm not saying that as a sales tactic. Like, look, I'm looking for people I can really make an impact with. And if you're ready to make a change and want to see if I can help you, let's talk and see if we're a good fit for each other.
That's awesome. To everybody who's listening, you have been listening to Casey Carroll from Action Advertising Agency. And I want to thank you all for tuning in today, and make sure that you return next Thursday and every Thursday for the next episode of Operation Agency Freedom.
Yeah.